speaking to all of our esteemed colleagues who might be viewing and watching this. To preserve our professional standing in the industry and to have those companies on our side, we need to make sure that we are telling the truth and that we are drawing a very clear distinction between a process and a product. Rich, let's have a conversation about being your own bank.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So being your own bank, be the bank. And to be your own bank, you have to buy an infinite banking policy so that you can be the bank. Here's what comes up for me when I hear that. So one of the things is that I think, and you and I had this conversation just recently as well, where we talked about educating with clarity and that we can all be better at that. I'm the first person to step up and say, early in my journey as an IBC practitioner, I would sensationalize the message in the sense that I would get really excited about the illustrations. I'd get super excited about the, accumulating cash values in the policy and place a high degree of emphasis on that. And then having this woodshed moment with Nelson, where Nelson said, here are the reasons why I think that's all simply unnecessary. And he said two things. He said, one, people need to develop a deep understanding that the infinite banking concept has absolutely nothing to do with life insurance. And secondly, the more you see infinite banking concepts, the more you'll see you didn't see. So that was a huge, huge coaching moment. But recently there's been just this growing trend of social media marketing in North America, where a lot of people who purport to know something about the concept are using this language that I just described to you earlier. Be the bank, buy your infinite banking policy, insert whatever here, right? Buy cars and grow rich. And the list goes on and on and on. And not only are these statements misleading and inaccurate, but they really put the entire practitioner community in a very awkward position. And before you weigh in, I just want to say this. Nelson encouraged us to remember that words matter. Words have significant meaning, and that we can easily misclassify things through the use of words. And Nelson didn't encourage people to become an institution. Be the bank. What does that even mean? I'm a human being. You want me to become the bank? How do I become an institution? He encouraged us to become our own banker, which is one of the four characters in the financial play. And there's obviously, again, catchy marketing. Let's market to it. Let's tell people to be the bank and beat the bank and hug the bank, or whatever it is that the marketing messages are saying. The general public hears the words and may not necessarily understand the meaning behind what's being said, and the fact that it's just inaccurate, plain and simple. And so I wrote this article for the upcoming banknotes, a newsletter that's distributed and circulated by the Nelson Nash Institute, just to weigh in on this topic, this hot topic, and try to bring some clarity to correctly classifying the language around the infinite banking concept.
Yeah, I think what comes up for me, obviously, I mean, you and I've had a number of conversations about this, and hey, like I say, we've walked a path, and in the path of walking it, you know what you know at a given time, and you're always expanding and increasing your horizons.
Yeah.
So in the early days, I'm sure I said some things that were probably certainly not as accurate as we really try to focus on making them today. And that had to do with my level of understanding at the time, right. Not just with the process, maybe not having enough thorough reads of Nelson's book. Of course, you meet with Nelson, you talk to Nelson, you watch Nelson's DVD, which you can now still do. So those of you who didn't get a chance to talk to Nelson, you still have an opportunity. There's lots of Nelson available oh, and a quick heads up, there's going to be even more of that coming out in the future, as you know, the Nelson Nash Institute is going to be producing some more archive footage of Nelson that will be available for the general public, which is a huge blessing to anyone on planet Earth that gets a chance to have that experience.
Yeah.
And so as we grow and develop, we heighten our own level of understanding, and we get clearer and tighter on all those things. And so, you know, I appreciate how we really take the core, I think, of Nelson's message in the way that, from our perspective, to the best of my ability anyway, I believe I can channel what Nelson taught me, right, and move that forward into my clients and into the advisors that we work with and teach and coach and mentor, which is not just people with our organization. There's any advisor who is coachable and actually wants to take this beautiful concept and begin to share and implement that with their clients. There's a path recommended to doing that with the Nelson Nash Institute, of course, being the core of it. But Nelson wrote the book Becoming Your Own Banker. It was published in the year 2000. We're recording this in the summer of 2023. So it's only it's not even a full 23 years of that book being in production. It's self-published.
Right.
He wrote his second book, Building Your Warehouse of Wealth, which the subtitle is A Grassroots Method of Avoiding Fractional Reserve Banking. Think about it. Do you remember when Nelson was telling us about the book? He's like, oh, wait till you see my next book. Get this. The subtitle is Think about it. He was like, of all the stuff, the thing that he was most excited about was think about it. And, so I've got my copy of that book right here. And so this book was published in 2012.
Yeah.
So that book it hasn't even completed 11 years in production. So when I think about when we started this and when we came into the information, it was before this book was published.
Yeah.
And the resources that were available at the time was Nelson's book, and very little else available, very little online. There wasn't, if there was, we certainly didn't know about it. Anything available on like YouTube. There was no podcast. People, the only podcast that existed was like Joe Rogan at that time. And because he was the first guy out of the gate or whatever. So there wasn't the level of accessible information available to the general public. And now, because of the volume of accessible information, we also see a lot of these content or word choice related issues being created. And the issue is, I think, primarily, or for the most part, is unintentional, the law of unintended consequences. Yeah. So when you can continually communicate to your clients, your client base, or the general public in such a way that is misleading, even if it's unintentional, the result of that is people are misled. And that misleading activity, well, eventually it rises to things like regulators, things like the insurance company. And they start to wonder, oh, well, what's going on? Like, why are you saying these things that, well, that's just not like really accurate. Like, we don't sell banks here. We have insurance contracts. That's right. And then there begins to be, all it takes is for a couple of clients of one advisor to phone into the life company and says, hey, yeah, can you help me work with my, my banking policy or my banking system? And the person on the other end of the line, who's just a very nice individual that works for that insurance carrier, is like, what the heck is this? Yeah. Take note of it, bring it up to a supervisor. Supervisor brings it up to the next level of the chain. And eventually, you're going to have some problems that are created. Nelson knew and was aware that in order for us to use the functionality that is already provided by a beautiful system created by insurance companies for our own purposes and our own day-to-day life usage, we need to have those organizations effectively on our side, is what he would have said. Yeah. And the way that you do that is that you play in their sandbox. You abide by their rules and that sort of thing. And that's okay. They're meant to be there for a certain reason. So you have to communicate effectively. Yeah.
It's just being unequivocal. When you purchase a dividend-paying, participating whole life insurance policy, you're buying a financial product from a reputable life insurance company. That is not infinite banking. And so when we take words and put them together because we want to be very clever in marketing. And we use language like, come and buy your infinite banking policy, or yes, you can absolutely purchase an infinite banking policy. Line up all the life insurance carriers and ask them where we find that.
Yeah. Where is that on your product shelf? Where's your marketing material for
right?
that,
And
that product?
so it just opens the door to unnecessary attention that Nelson, again, and for those who are watching or listening who didn't have the joy of knowing this man, he would tell us often, the infinite banking concept is ridiculously simple. It does not need to be sensationalized. And when Nelson said that people need to develop the understanding that the infinite banking concept has absolutely nothing to do with life insurance, he was crystal clear in the distinction between what a person was buying versus what they are implementing. When you purchase a dividend paying whole life insurance policy, you are the proud owner of a unilateral binding contract. That is what you purchased. What you are implementing is a process, and the policy, it just so happens to be one element of the implementation of a process. It is not one and the same. And we are just receiving, because for viewers and listeners, so Richard proudly serves as a practitioner council member with the Nelson Nash Institute. I proudly serve as an advisor to the board. And what we want to do is work really hard for the practitioner community, for the benefit of a growing community, by shedding light on this very important issue. We are not standing or sitting here before anybody today to say we're perfect. Hey, we've made mistakes. And to add to what Richard said earlier, we've made mistakes as it related to the process. I think we've always done a really remarkably accurate job of describing the attributes of a product, because all that information was readily available, and you know, we were able to articulate that and communicate that very effectively. But as it relates to the process of becoming your own banker, Nelson was clear, and he told us the moment the message begins to be sensationalized is the moment we can turn something so wonderful into something that could really draw unnecessary attention for all the wrong reasons, because intentional or otherwise. The moment you've got a marketplace conduct, a regulator, somebody stepping up and going, has anybody got the file on infinite banking policies? Can somebody bring us the file on that? I don't recall ever having a discussion around this type of product. What is that exactly? And somebody says, oh, it doesn't exist. So they start calling around to the insurance companies going, do you have one of these? Do you have one of these? Do you have one of these? No, no, no. And then it's not too long before God forbid, if it happened, an advisor gets that dreaded phone call to say, hey, we're just going to go ahead and put your business on hold until we can sort out exactly what you're communicating to the marketplace. So we got to be very, very careful in making sure that we're speaking the truth. We're not telling half truths. We're not trying to mislead people, because that misleading can lead to very ill-informed financial decisions. And people
the general public needs to know. The clients
exactly
need to know, because they're the ones that are their own banker. The advisor isn't their banker. The insurance company isn't their banker. They are the banker. Their banker isn't their banker. They're the banker.
And thank you for, again, using the correct words. Banker, not be the bank, beat the bank, become the bank. That's not what you're doing. You are becoming one of four characters in the financial play that Nelson so eloquently described in his book titled Becoming Your Own Banker. Unlock the infinite banking concept. There's no subtitle that reads buy infinite banking policies. They don't exist. They just don't exist. And so let's just shed light on this issue and share with our esteemed colleagues that we can all be better. And sensationalizing it is so unnecessary. People are drawn to work with the practitioners now who are just telling the truth. Let people decide for themselves. And we don't have to use these catchy marketing phrases to try and convince people that they need to go and buy something that doesn't even exist. And yeah, we get it. Anybody who's proficient would say, well, that's not what I mean. Yeah, but the general public doesn't understand that nuance. They don't understand what you're saying. They need to be educated on it. So help them understand the problem so that when you present the solution, they know exactly what to do.
When there's, similar to the aspect that you just mentioned, Jason, about, possibilities that exist from the, carrier perspective. Well, at the beginning of this year, there was a large, well-known carrier in the United States who released a internal memo, or well, it wasn't really internal because it made its way out to basically their licensed advisory force, of which, so anyone that's contracted with them as a licensed advisor that's able to conduct business with them, about the fact that they, effectively did not support, I'm going to summarize the infinite banking concept. And then, so, shoot forward, there's all kinds of content now that's been created about advisors who teach or promote or recommend in some way, shape, or form, and however they do that the concept. And all of these clickbait type headlines, I'm like, oh, this company no longer supports the infinite banking concept. Well, the company never supported it to begin with.
Right.
The company doesn't have a product on their shelf. You're misleading again, just with the clickbait title. Like, there is no support because it's not necessary. The concept has nothing to do with the insurance carrier. The insurance carrier sells a whole life product that any consumer can go and find an advisor with 2 feet and a heartbeat and request that they get them a product, whether it's set up appropriately or is up to that person to determine.
Yeah.
And then they could begin using it as a policy owner in their life as a banker who creates and manages the rules of how they dictate that within their own personal economy.
Yeah.
Which is completely separate of anything to do with the insurance company's realm. This is internal personal economics, transactional activity, which has good savings mechanisms in place about paying yourself more than you would a third party because you and your family are worth it. If you're willing to go pay ABC Bank a certain amount of money, why on earth wouldn't you pay at least that and a greater amount to your own family because they're worth it and you love them, right? Yeah. Very logical thing to do.
Nelson always
mechanics of the insurance company is just completely independent of that. They're not even connected. Once you take a policy loan, the only component is the activity of maybe taking a policy loan and making loan repayments, but those are independent transactional items that are determined and decided and implemented through a process by the policy owner.
Yep. And Nelson always referred to a participating dividend paying whole life insurance contract as the entity. That is the entity. And from that place, you can implement the process of becoming your own banker. But they're in no way connected where the process is somehow connected to the life insurance company. It has nothing to do with life insurance. It's an exercise in logic. It's an exercise in reasoning. It's an exercise in imagination and prophecy. That's it. He didn't say that it was an exercise in anything other than that. And when a person really grasps the distinction between a product and a process, it opens your eyes to far more than you ever saw before with the infinite banking concept. Hence why Nelson often said, the more you see infinite banking concepts, the more you'll see you didn't see. And within the life insurance advisor community, what we're seeing is a growing trend of, if I hold myself out there as an infinite banking concept expert, I'm going to sell more life insurance policies. And so I've got to develop this really gimmicky, catchy marketing to get people compelled to do something. When you're acting in the capacity of a life licensed advisor, you're fulfilling a duty of care to a prospective client to make sure that whatever it is you're planning to sell them, that there's a need for it and that the death benefit has merit. That is part of our internal compliance process. Not a single file goes from interest to application without going through that filter. And there's a reason that we instituted that, because we're not beginning to implement a process until we have a policy owner. And to get from interested to policy owner, we have to fulfill that duty of care as a life licensed advisor. And then once the policy owner has the entity, then it's from that place they can begin to implement a process where all the additional coaching, mentoring, comes into play. And so to preserve our professional standing, speaking to all of our esteemed colleagues who might be viewing and watching this, to preserve our professional standing in the industry and to have those companies on our side, we need to make sure that we are telling the truth and that we are drawing a very clear distinction between a process and a product, because otherwise the consequences can be ill-fated. And we do not want to be going down that path, because it's far more difficult to try and climb out of that than it would be to make sure we're shining a light on this issue and educating the life carriers on the concept, which we are, as you know, Rich, at the Institute level, we're in active dialogue with companies to say, let us make sure that we help you develop an understanding straight from the source, along with an understanding of the marketplace conduct that we support and the marketplace conduct that we will never support.
And speaking of the source, a couple great locations where people can dig deeper into the source. Obviously, the book, Becoming Your Own Banker. In the description below, you'll find a link where you can purchase a copy of that book. But we absolutely always recommend that people watch Nelson's documentary film. You can go to nelsonnashfilm.com. That's nelsonnashfilm.com. And then additionally, we have 2 other incredible resources over and above that are available for consumers. You can go to learnfromnelson.com. Once you go to learnfromnelson.com, you'll see a list of about 30 videos, which is an archive footage of Nelson where he walks through a training on the book. You can follow along the book with Nelson and go through some Q&A from a group of advisors. It's all transcribed and ready to go. There's a lot of, even like clips of the book is right there in the videos to follow along with. And then additionally, we have a tribute project called Day of Nelson, dayofnelson.com. And you can listen in on interviews and additional archive clips of Nelson himself teaching interspersed throughout that whole segment, where you get to learn and meet with people who actually spend a great deal of time with Nelson, talking through this concept, bringing it into their own life, and then learning a way that they could take Nelson's message and share it outwardly into the world. And, beautiful interviews, people sharing really amazing life stories about their experience with the concept and with Nelson directly.
Yeah.
And those are learning opportunities that we all have available. In Nelson's book, again, his two books, I really want to come back to Building Your Warehouse of Wealth, because this, to me, and the title I think Nelson has here, was really something he was very proud of, because at the end of the day, you need a place to store your wealth. It's got to reside somewhere.
Yeah.
What better place to have it reside? What he was talking about is the contract, unilaterally binding contract of dividend paying whole life insurance, put together, actuarially designed by a quality insurance company.
Yeah.
That is a warehouse where capital accumulates. Capital not being direct money, but cash value as a form of capital.
That's right.
And your ability to tap into that reservoir isn't you taking your own money and paying interest to your own money or any of those things, the other misleading statements that are out there. You're never accessing your money. You are accessing the insurance company's money from the general fund. That is what a policy loan is. It's an asset on the books of the insurance company. You co-own that company as a participating owner. So that co-ownership means that, hey, that money is put together in a custodial fashion to be looked after for all participating members. So if Jason and his family are doing business with the company, and I'm my family, and we've got 10,000 clients out there all doing business with that company, and we're all taking loans and we're all putting money back in as loan repayments, that those are a source of cash flow and earnings for a company that we all share the profits in, and they have to distribute those profits with us.
Yep.
A very beautiful and simple system, all administered at no cost to us by the insurance carrier. So he said we have the makings of the mechanics of a system that we can then implement the process of utilizing that system at the you and me level. And that's really what Nelson was getting at.
And all so accurate. It's just, we emphasize this because we've been sharing this quite a bit lately, that quite shocking, I talk to advisors all the time, and so few understand that cash value isn't actually money. And cash value is the equity that's accumulating in the policy that opens the doorway to ready access capital on demand on your terms. But cash value itself is not actually money. And when Nelson said, hey, it's fundamentally true that your money must reside somewhere. Well, when you're paying premium into the insurance company's money pool, the insurance company is putting that capital to work. Your cash value is the net present value of the future payment of a death benefit. And that cash value is a doorway to capital, to real money that you get to deploy and control how you finance all the things that you'll need throughout your lifetime.
Which you're going to finance anyway.
You're going to do it anyway.
Finance everything that you buy.
Yeah. And again, it's just really understanding what's going on so that you'll know exactly what you need to do. And credit to people for wanting to get the message out there and to get people excited about the concept. Absolutely. Don't ever lose that. Whoever is watching this, viewing this, talking about it, don't ever lose that. Get the message out there, but do it in a way that leaves no room for misinterpretation and leaves no room for the general public being misled to believe that, they're purchasing an infinite banking policy, or they're getting rich by buying cars, or whatever other catchy things that, are being said out there. And this stuff is just being brought up. Like literally, I get links from people. Hey, take a look at this, take a look at that. It's like, okay, well, let's take a moment just to address it. Let's reach out, connect with these folks, let them know, give them an opportunity to make the necessary adjustments. And hopefully, most being the professionals that they are, they will. They'll say, oh gosh, you know what? Yeah, good point. Like, I do need to adjust that. And I see the rationale as to why I need to adjust that.
I'll communicate that to our entire team. You brought something else up that made me think of this. So a little plug for Cash Follows the Leader. You can get a copy by going to cashfollows.com. One of the reasons we wrote this book has to do with, to some degree, I don't think the intention was that at the time, but I realize now in retrospect that that's fundamentally what's transpired.
Yeah,
is to help people understand, to the general public, but certainly advisors could take some heed of this as well, is what actually causes cash value to grow, to accumulate.
Right.
And it's a very simple thing. We have a death benefit, and there's a contract that says the cash has got to grow to equal the death benefit. It's that simple. So people get into all these hot and bothered conversations, and the keyboard warriors are out there on the blogs and the forums, and they're just like, it's like Chicken Little and the sky is falling, and they're losing their minds trying to figure out the rate of return of the policy and how does this grow, and well, what's the guaranteed amount, and what's this amount, and like, oh my God, what a bunch of white noise.
Yeah.
Death benefit, if well done, and the policy owner's behavior is creating an augmentation and a constant increase of that death benefit, you create a constant increase in accumulating cash value because the cash has got to equal the death benefit. It's just so ridiculously simple.
Yeah.
None of that other stuff matters whatsoever. And so every time that you increase the death benefit, you're creating an automated, guaranteed future increasing outcome of cash value,
Which has
can be
nothing to do
utilized.
with infinite banking.
Nothing. It's just
got
how the policy
nothing
works.
whatsoever to do with the infinite banking concept.
Yeah.
It's an entity. You put money into the company that provided you with the entity. The company is contractually bound to ensure that the cash value equals the total death benefit by age 100 of the life that is insured. No infinite banking anything is required to own that entity. Regaining control of the banking function and reclaiming that from outsiders and becoming your own banker and controlling the process of how you finance the things that you need in life. That is a process, not a product. Never has been, never will be. The best entity to get the job of implementing the process done is a dividend-paying, participating whole life insurance contract, ideally with a mutual company, and ideally a system of policies that you put into place gradually and incrementally over a period of time, respecting the fact that in order to trigger the purchase of that entity, it has to have merit. So there's a duty of care that the advisor has to the prospective client to make sure that the size of that entity is appropriate. Long before any process is even implemented. So we just want to make sure that there's just a crystal clear distinction there so that when you see this content on your social media news feeds all across North America, and you're hearing some of this language where you're like, not really quite sure that is that even possible? Versus, I know what the truth is, and I understand the problem. I've developed a reason why I want to implement this process, so I don't lose sight of that while never forgetting what I purchased from somebody. Remember, purchasing something and implementing a process are two completely different things. That's what we really want to shed a light on. And again, can't express it enough to all our esteemed colleagues. We hope that, if much like Rich and I in our journey where we had to course correct along the way, perfection is elusive because the more you see infinite banking concepts, the more you'll see you didn't see. It's ridiculously simple. It doesn't need to be sensationalized. We just hope that this serves as even just a small dose of inspiration to take that sensationalizing out of the equation and watch what happens to the results of your business. They will skyrocket.
You want to know who did a great job of not sensationalizing, but education to understand the concept in a simple way, using real world analogies, explaining things at what we would refer to as the you and me level, was Nelson Nash. The best way to see how he did that is to watch Nelson's seminar series, which is available through the Nelson Nash Institute.
Yeah.
To go to learnfromnelson.com, to watch the Nelson Nash documentary film. All of those resources will automatically clear up a lot of things because Nelson never needed to he never needed to explain things beyond what was simple.
Yeah.
And it just works.
Yeah.
How's that expression go? That if you don't understand the problem or what's going on, then the details don't matter.
The solution just won't matter.
But if you understand what's going on, well, then the details also don't matter because you get it, right? So it doesn't mean that you don't need to have a good meeting with an advisor and confirm important details around what product you're going to get. That's not what we're getting at.
Yeah.
But recognizing that you can control the method, the way, the ongoing aspect of how you go about purchasing all the things that you're going to buy in your life, which includes things like your income at retirement and other components of life, all of these accumulated components of life, financing business equipment, financing whatever, cars, vehicles, or just purchasing them in general. We say financing because you're making a financing decision, but the reality is you're purchasing something.
Yeah.
Money's got to go flow from one part to another in a short period of time. That's what the banking transactions are all about. That the method of you controlling that flow is where the process comes in. So you can be your own banker. Nelson taught us how, and he can teach you how. You just go and get this book and you can begin implementing. You don't have to, it's not rocket science, because the only thing that's rocket science is rocket science.
That's right. That's right. Amen to that. Well, that was fun. And yeah, we hope those who watched and listened found it valuable as well. And we'd love to hear from you. And, Rich has got his UFC gloves. So if anybody wants to duke it out with him in the octagon, you're welcome to do that too. But Nelson often shared that, the concept isn't meant to be shared in terms of knowledge and education and awareness through argument. It's just shed a light on the problem so that when you recommend the solution, your prospective client knows exactly what to do. And that's what matters most, is what's best for the prospective client. And it's not about right or wrong. It's just that we think differently. That's all. And Nelson would be doing backflips in his final resting place if he saw some of this content that's out there around how what he worked so hard to develop and pioneer is just being sensationalized, and it simply doesn't need to be. So thank you so much, everybody. And much like we always see on these videos, there's another one that just popped up, part of the recommended playlist. Rich made some great recommendations too on some reading material that would be extremely valuable. And we can include links to that where people can get their hands on that great reading material. And again, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear what insights have come up for you through this conversation that Rich and I shared, and what you find good about it and what you find bothersome about it. We'd love to hear both sides of the argument. Have an awesome rest of your day, Rich. This was absolutely amazing. Real fun.